So today I'm going to talk about the essence of product management, about lean road mapping. I'm going to talk about what good looks like when it comes to road mapping, but I'm also going to talk about how you could use those ideas to do more than just roadmaps for products and for features, but also how you can use these techniques to do road mapping for other things within the business, whether it's sales or marketing or anything really where you've got to prioritize and consider how you're going to help your stakeholders. I'll start out with a little bit of the basics around product management and talk a bit about why product managers exist, kind of a little bit of a refresher. Now, I'm not going to talk about how to write a product spec or how to write or how to prioritize a backlog. It's more about the bigger picture, the more strategic picture, and why we really need product managers. So there are a couple of basic questions that product managers are really there to answer. And the crux of everything to do with product management is, what problem do we need to solve? Go for it.
Sorry, do you have a problem with the lights there? Is there any way we can...
I don't know without asking these guys.
Thanks.
That's all right. It's a problem to solve. Maybe we need to roadmap it. So product managers are really focused around working out what problems they need to solve. But not only that, product managers should be saying, how do we know when that problem is solved? And really, rather than talking about when something is going to be delivered or how we're going to do it or who's going to be doing it, I tend to think of those things as being project management. And I think the essence of product management is, what are we going to do and why are we going to do it? And that's why we have this idea of finding problems to solve and checking to make sure they have been solved. That's something that I kind of get a little bit evangelical about, so forgive me if I go too far on that, but I do feel very, very strongly that there is a huge difference between product and project. And you'll see as we go through the road mapping section, that's why we say the things that we say. So with that in mind, how do product managers tackle those two questions? I'm sure that many of you will know these kind of basics. They will be listening to the needs of their stakeholders. Now, stakeholders are going to be internal stakeholders, they're going to be customers, they're going to be the end users who aren't necessarily the same as the buyers. They're going to be potential buyers or potential users, so people who don't use their product yet but that could use their product. But it's really about talking to as many people as possible, listening to them, and then translating that into something that can be actionable within the business. And as a result of getting that knowledge, a product manager is going to be able to balance competing priorities. Product person's going to know all of the different facets, all of the different things that are going on that are in the debate around how to use resources and how to help our customers. What it really means is that product managers are basing their decisions on having an understanding of the complete picture. Now, when they've got that complete picture, what they're then going to be doing is communicating those priorities to the rest of the business and collaborating with the rest of the business to refine strategy. Now, I do talk about products, but actually I think product can be interchangeable with service, with marketing strategy, with sales strategy. It's anything that you are building for the rest of the business to benefit from. And so effectively, regardless of whether you're talking about building a new feature or a new product, or whether you're talking about the way you're positioning something in the market, a product manager's role is about providing leadership. And so finding out what questions to ask, asking the questions, finding out if they're solved, and generally bringing everybody together, being a leader. That's what product managers are all about. Now, as I say, product managers are very focused on building products, but I do still think all of these principles are applicable across the board for anything that you want to prioritize. This is going to sound really geeky. I use these principles when I kind of prioritize what we're going to do in our family and what our long-term goals are as a family. At the end of the day, it's stuff we want to do that we haven't got the time or the money to do all of it. So why not think about it in terms of what's the best thing for us to do? Pick the right thing. It's not building a product, but it's about prioritization. And I hope to think that I provide leadership in my family, but maybe you should ask my husband on that one. So with that in mind, our roadmap's just for products. This was almost at one point the title of this talk. But I think it was such an obvious answer that the answer is no. Based on what I've said so far, that it was a bit too much of a giveaway. I'm hoping that by answering it straight up, I'm not going to just give you all the answers and you're going to walk out the door. I'm going to hopefully explain that along the way. Now, the reason that I feel qualified to talk to you about this is that I'm Chief Customer Officer at a company who build product management software. Now, the reason that I feel that I've got to this conclusion about product management not being just for products is that I was a product manager for 10 years. I worked in a startup environment, I've worked in a big corporate environment, I've worked in a small but well-established business, and then I've moved from that product management role into the role of Chief Customer Officer, where my focus is on the customer journey and making sure our customers are looked after from start to finish. And I just found myself road mapping the things that we were doing. So whether it was sales or marketing or how we were doing customer success or onboarding or payments and billing, all of that, there was so many ideas and things that we had along the way that was like, well, I need to road map all this stuff. And that's where the idea for this talk came from. So first of all, why do we need a roadmap? What's the benefit of a roadmap to the business? A roadmap should show you what you're planning to do. It should show you why. Now, that's really, really important. One of the things I talked about in the blurb for this talk was OKRs, objectives and key results, metrics, KPIs, whatever you talk about, whatever you call them. OKRs are a way of communicating what it is that your business wants to achieve. We want to increase revenue, therefore we're going to track the number of customers that sign up. We want to improve usability, so we're going to track key results around NPS or customer satisfaction or whatever it might be. That's the way OKRs work. And actually, anything that you do on a roadmap should really be able to link back to your company OKRs or your company objectives. There's no point having something on a roadmap if you can't say why it's there. If you're doing something and it doesn't link back to your company objectives, then honestly, it probably shouldn't even be on your roadmap and you shouldn't be doing it. So I feel, again, very strongly that a roadmap is there to help you understand what you're working on and why, and also to give you the ability to say no to things. It's not going on the roadmap because it doesn't help us meet our company objectives. The other thing I think is important with the roadmap is it should be transparent, it should be visible, it should be something that provokes debate within the business, and we'll touch on that in just a little while. Now, the main goal of a roadmap for me is to reduce business risk. And I think it's a different way of looking at it. People think of roadmaps as being something that they use to communicate to a development team what they're going to work on next and what the project plan is and when it's got to be done by, and you've got to have it done by this deadline. Well, that's all very well, but how is that helping the business if you deliver something by a deadline that then doesn't actually solve the customer problem? So to me, the goal of a roadmap is to reduce business risk by making sure everybody's got visibility over what's coming down the pipeline and has the opportunity to point out where something needs to change. And so if everybody has that visibility and that understanding of what's on the roadmap, you're more likely to sort problems out before you get that far. Now, I don't know how many of you know this lady here. Her name is Jana Basto. She is my CEO, fab boss, by the way. I'm saying that because I'm being filmed and she might see it. But she is CEO and co-founder of the company that I work for. She's also co-founder of Product Tank and Mind the Product. And what she says is the roadmap is a prototype for your strategy. I think this is a great way of thinking about it. A roadmap is something that provokes discussion, that you can talk to your colleagues about, that they can input into, and it should be something that's a living document that changes over time so that as you learn more, you can adapt it to make sure it's going to help you solve those customer problems. It's a conversation starter at the end of the day, and as such, it should be something that can be flexible and can be changed. Again, we'll come back to that in a second. I think it's also important on a roadmap to talk about outcomes rather than output. Now, what I mean by that is you should be talking about what problems this roadmap is going to help you solve, rather than we're going to deliver X number of points in this sprint and we're going to get a velocity of such and such and we're going to push these numbers of stories through our Kanban board. That's output. That's a measurement of how much is done. but that isn't necessarily a measurement of whether you're satisfying your customers' needs. If you talk about outcomes, as in NPS score goes up, or we saw more revenue coming into the business, or we're getting more referrals based on the work that we've done, that is an outcome that your business has benefited from as a result of the work that you've done. And to me, what that means is not just measuring how much work goes through the pipeline, it's giving everybody within the business the satisfaction that what they're building and what they're doing is helping their customers, which is really why we're all developing things and building things and changing things. We're not doing it for fun, we're doing it because we want our customers and our users to benefit. So what we should be doing is talking about those outcomes rather than talking about how many points we've delivered. Measuring points and things, very important from a project management and a sprint planning point of view, but from a customer point of view, less so. Now, with that in mind, what we recommend to anybody who talks to us about road mapping, and what I've learnt the hard way from having done roadmaps for so long, is to ditch the timeline roadmap. And I would encourage you to tell everybody you know to get rid of a timeline roadmap, because it's really there to help you fail. Now, what I don't mean by this is it's going to help you fail in the way of learning stuff. We all want to make small, quick failures and learn from it and improve and iterate. We're agile. We want to iterate. We want to do things and learn along the way. No, what I mean is this is the kind of roadmap, and I'm speaking from personal experience, where you put it up on a chart like this, you talk to your customers about what they're going to get in mid-April and what they're going to get in August, and then when you get to August, you haven't delivered it, because stuff happens, life happens, things change along the way. This kind of roadmap is going to help product managers stand up and talk about dates that just don't work out, and it's going to put pressure on development teams to do things that are just not fair. So this is not something that we like to see. I'm going to walk you through the reasons why we think it will help you to fail. And it starts out really with the format. We've got, down the left-hand side, we've got a list of things to do. And along the top, we've got time marching forward and never stopping like time does. And the first thing we do is we put feature A on here. Now, we know feature A pretty well. We understand what it's going to do. We've written specs. We've got estimates. We know who our development team are that's going to be working on it. And so we can have quite a lot of confidence around when feature A is going to be delivered. Things change, but we're pretty good with this, so I'm OK with this. But then we start to put on feature B, and we know feature B's got to start around the time feature A finishes. We've got a rough idea how long it's going to take, so we can plot that on there. We're already starting to make assumptions that when feature A finishes, it's really finished. And we're already making assumptions that we'll know enough about feature B to get it right. And then we put feature C on there, and it's finger in the air guess. And we're already starting to kind of edge around whether we can actually meet the dates that are already going on this diagram. So we start to add all the things to this roadmap, and just by the structure of it, every bar that we put on here has got a due date, it's got a duration. We are fixing time, we are fixing scope, but we are not able to fix quality. And so this is just really setting us up to make promises for things that we probably can't deliver. Now, what it's really doing is it's making lots of assumptions. It's making you assume that you know the feature is correct and that it is the right feature to build. It's making you understand that the feature will be right first time when it goes out and that you won't need to iterate on it. It's giving you the assumption that you know how many people are going to be working on it. 6 months down the line, how many people are we going to have in our team? I don't know. So we're making lots and lots of assumptions in order to put this chart together. It's great for executives, it's great for senior leaders, because it's a bit of a comfort blanket. They're looking at this and going, yeah, we're going to have that by then, and that by then, and that by then. But it's not telling them what problems you're solving, it's just telling them a list of features. And honestly, this might sound awful, but it's lying to them a little bit. It's telling them that things are going to be great, and they can't do what they need to do, which is to plan for things going wrong and mitigating against that. So it's not really good for anybody. The grand assumption that we're making is that nothing is going to change. And that's a very, very difficult assumption to make. I don't know if I've ever seen a timeline roadmap where everything worked out. Now, one of the things that I wanted to say in this talk, and the reason that I titled it about learning from industry, was the concept of lean. And my basic definition, or the definition that I've seen about lean, is that lean means it's efficient and with no wastage. Obviously, this goes back to lean product manufacture and all that kind of stuff. So what we want is a roadmap that allows us to be efficient, allows us to deliver the right things with as little wastage as possible. And that means it's got to be a roadmap that's flexible, that helps us to solve problems. And so what we recommend is a roadmap that looks a bit more like this. It's sometimes called a now, next, later, current, near-term, future, time horizon. This is the kind of roadmap that we think, or that I think, is much more suited to purpose. Now, what this is really giving you is the ability to talk about the things that you're working on now that you actually know about really well. You know that you've written the specs, you've got a good idea who's working on it, all those things. You've got designs, all those things that I mentioned earlier on about feature A. Those are the things that we'll see in our now column. We understand them really well, and actually these things you probably could whisper dates to people within the organisation about when they're likely to be delivered. The things that you'll put in your next column should be, you're still probably in the discovery phase with those. You're still learning from your customers. You're still learning about how exactly they need to be. You might have put together prototypes and put them in front of your customers, and they've come back and said, no, change this, change that, change that. Certainly for us, we use a lean roadmap, and that's the things that we're prototyping and researching at the moment are the things that are in our next column. That later column is things that you just know you want to do one day. I want to build a mobile app, and I'd like a conservatory on my house. I haven't got the resource for it. I don't know what shape it'll be. I don't know how big it would be. But that's in the later column of my personal roadmap, is that I'd like a conservatory. I have no details. I couldn't give it to a builder and tell him what to build, but I know I want one day. And putting it on this roadmap means that I can talk to the people around me about what it might look like and learn a bit more about it. So it's showing direction, it's showing the things that I want to do, and for the columns that are closer to the current date, there's a lot less flexibility and a lot more specificity around what they're going to look like. Now I'm going to show you another couple of examples of what a lean roadmap could look like. This is one where I am starting to talk about what I'm going to build from a development point of view. But you can see that as well as talking about the fact that we're going to introduce an inline checkout flow, and we're going to add single sign-on, and we're going to put in-app notifications, we can also talk a bit about why we're doing that. Partially with the description that's on there, what are we helping users to do? Why are we doing that? What are they going to benefit from? But also, how is it going to benefit our business? It's going to help us to increase revenue. It's going to help us to improve usability and security. So I'm tying the things that are on this roadmap back to the business objectives, which means that when I talk to my senior leadership team, not only do they understand what I'm going to build, but they understand why I'm going to do it and can understand what kind of problems to solve. My marketing team knows how to start writing up some of the collateral for it. My sales team can talk to their potential customers about the kind of problems our product is going to solve. And so everybody's getting something out of this, as opposed to just we're going to deliver feature A on date B. Another quick example here, this is one that's perhaps more focused on a sales side of things or a customer-facing side of things. We want to encourage consultants to recommend the products. We want to ensure markets understand who we are. We want to make it easier for enterprise companies to buy. These are not features that my development team are building, but these are things that my sales and marketing and customer success and support people are working on as projects. But we're prioritizing what we're doing, and we're making sure the things that we're working on now are helping us with our current OKR, which is to increase market share and to get more users. So same concepts, but I'm not building products here. I am managing an internal team who have stuff to do. So that's the first tip, really, to use product management, road mapping and lean road mapping in order to improve the way your business works, is consider this kind of lean roadmap concept, and definitely ditch your timeline roadmap. Can't say that enough. The other thing I'm going to suggest is to separate strategy from execution. Now, we've kind of talked about that a little bit already, in the fact that we've talked about having a roadmap that is talking about what we're doing and why, to provoke discussion. That is helping us to refine our strategy. But there's something else that you can do to help with that as well. And that is breaking it down into the things that you're considering versus the things that you're actually doing. So here on the left, you can see our product backlog, or our ideas backlog, or our concepts backlog, or our opportunity backlog, all the stuff we might do. They're suggestions, they're thoughts, we don't really understand them well. They're just kind of light bulb idea type things. They're not approved, they're not prioritised, we haven't sized them, and everybody's still contributing thoughts about how those things could work. We don't want to see that in Jira. We don't want developers to be looking at a list of that stuff and going, oh, cool, I can make that chart 3D. What we want is for the development team to be looking at the things that they're actually asked to work on, or for our marketing team to look at the blogs we actually want them to write, or whatever it might be. They're much more well-defined, we prioritise them, we know how long it's going to take, they're easy to deliver in short cycles, and that's the backlog, which is like an execution backlog. So that's another kind of product management thing. Let's separate discovery and research from the stuff that we're actually executing on. So that's something that I definitely recommend as a product management practice that I think is valuable to everybody. Something else I want to encourage is to support experimentation. Now, it's interesting. Our keynote this morning was talking about being lean and about not being linear and about having, learning along the way and making changes opposed to having this big, long waterfall type project. And this is an area where experimentation can absolutely help you to do that. I'm going to walk you through an idea and how you might experiment on it. And you'll start to see how the benefits of experimentation. Now, the problem that we need to solve is that we've got two little characters and they need to communicate with each other. That's all we know at this point. They need to communicate. So our first experiment is to create a paper aeroplane. And we write down the thing that we need to communicate, we put it on the paper aeroplane and we throw it over the wall. Cheap, easy, quick, helps us to learn. And what we learn from this is that actually what our little pink dot wanted to do was to sing to the other person, or they wanted to send music. They didn't want to send written text. So we've learnt from that, and it didn't take us much of a cost or time to learn it. So we try something different, and we build a speaking tube. And our little pink dot is now happily singing to our purple dot, and we've solved that problem. Now, going back the other way to looking at a waterfall type project where everybody gets excited and we get scope creep, we might have built a really fancy telecom system or video conferencing type thing. But that would have cost a lot of money, we wouldn't have understood what we were doing, and actually we've solved the problem in just a few short steps here. There might be other people who really do want to talk and sing to each other, but over a longer distance. So maybe we now develop that a bit further on and we're building a telephone. But at this point, because we've been agile and we've experimented and we've created prototypes and we've learnt from that, we've already started to solve some problems. People who want to send just the written word can send their paper aeroplane. The people who just want to sing from one end of the park to the other can do that with the speaking tube. These guys want something a bit more fancy, so we've gone on a bit further. But again, we've learnt from this before we finally do get to our fully fledged video conferencing system. Along the way, we will have learnt things that would have made us want to change direction, and we will have wanted to pivot. We all hear about startups pivoting based on what they learn along the way. Can you imagine trying to do that with a timeline roadmap and tell your executives why you're not meeting that date that you said that you were going to solve that problem? This is another reason why if you put experimentation and innovation in a business, you're not going to be able to use a timeline roadmap and have that work well for you. Now I'm going to move on to another topic which has been kind of knocking around for a little while. You will hear people talk about encouraging psychological safety. And this is an area where product managers can really help and really help the business to feel safe and to encourage people to collaborate and join in the kind of conversations that need to happen. I'd recommend a couple of little simple terms that you can introduce into your vocabulary. When somebody comes along and says, oh, we've got a problem, this particular group of users find it really, really difficult to sign into the app, then what you would say is, rather than saying we need to build a XYZ, go, how might we test that? How might we understand more about that? How might we learn a bit more about the problem? Now, it supposes as opposed to asserts, so it makes it safer, it makes it easier for people to feel included. It makes it easier for people to come up with ideas, even if they're a bit nervous, like, well, we could try this. We are trying this. It's not this person who's responsible for doing it. We are working on this together. It just makes a more comfortable conversation with the rest of the team. It makes it more likely that people will collaborate. It means that you're more likely you're going to be able to tap into the value that your team can bring, particularly those people in the team who maybe are a bit nervous about coming up with ideas. It's just an idea. How might we test it? It works really well alongside I bet, because then we're talking about a hypothesis, we're talking about an experiment, and we're talking about something that we need to test. And if it's wrong, we weren't wrong, you weren't wrong, you weren't wrong, the bet just didn't work out. So we're taking away the ownership of failure from a person to a group decision or a hypothesis that we want to test. So while we hear a lot of talking about psychological safety, I think just these two little phrases can really help within your team to make people feel more comfortable. Certainly within our business, I hear like the three main phrases I hear over and over again are, what problem are we trying to solve? Well, how might we test that? I bet if we did this, we'll see an increase in that. And then as a team, we can all centre around these ideas and work collaboratively, as opposed to Liz saying, oh, you need to do this, and that will solve the problem, and everybody just thinking they've got to do as they're told. It's a much more safe, relaxed environment. So generally, how do we see good product practice benefiting the business? If we use some of these tips, what are we likely to see from that? We'll reduce distractions. Everybody will be aligned around the same priorities. Developers are not going to run away and build the latest, coolest thing unless it's actually aligned with something we want to achieve as a business, aligned with something that we want to improve, aligned with a company goal. And we should all just be more focused. Again, I've seen this firsthand. The way that I used to do it as a product manager was to work on discovery and getting everybody involved. And we only started working on something within Jira once everybody in the team had had a look at it, understood it, made sure that we understood the specs, the designs and so on. And then we pushed things over into Jira and start working on it. We had reduced rework. Everybody was more focused, and we started, instead of just fixing bugs all the time, we were building new features that benefited our customers and our users. Not just the developers and the people at the coalface, though. Everybody should understand what's coming down the pipeline. Everybody should understand what's happening and why, which means that the powers that be who need to look at making sure we've got the right staff, the right skills, the right resources, they are all going to be able to understand what's happening and also why it's happening. You're going to reduce those conversations around why you're building A and not building B, because everybody understands that A is more likely to help us prove our hypothesis and will therefore help our customers and our users. It's going to help us to justify the decisions and reduce the amount of confrontation around those decisions. It's not just about the execs, though. It's about everybody else. Like the investors are going to be on board. The board themselves should understand more about what's going on. Our business operations team should understand more about what's happening. And frankly, our customers should understand more what's happening. We very much encourage a public roadmap. Maybe only put the stuff on there that you really do want to share externally. There's always stuff that you do want to keep internal to the company. But if customers can see what's going on as well and the direction of your product, they're more likely to buy into your product and feel happy to purchase it to solve a problem now, but also know they're going to be able to solve their problems in the future as well. So everybody's going along in the same direction, and again, everybody's really aligned. Also, I think it's important to build or to do the right things in the right way. If we start out by defining things as problems, we can leave the solutions to the experts. I was a product person. I have a vaguely technical background years and years ago, but my technical knowledge isn't up to date. Why should I be defining a solution? That's why the development team is there, or a marketing team is there, or a sales team is there. They're experts in their field. They should be telling me what the best solution is to that problem based on their knowledge of what's possible. It also means that everybody should be working around a consistent process. We do strategy, we understand problems, we prioritise, and then we work on what's going to be done after that, and we're more focused. And everybody will understand that we've got this consistent process and, again, be brought along for the ride. So overall, I think what we're talking about here is that we'll see some key benefits if you start to use some of these tips here that we've talked about. You're going to encourage collaboration across the business. That's got to be a good thing. Having one person make decisions and one person come up with all the answers is not a great way to work. It's much better if you can tap into that collective consciousness. So having these safe practices and these refined processes should encourage collaboration across the business. We should get better decisions. We should find that the outcomes for our customers are better because the decision making has been shared amongst multiple people, everybody's had a voice, and so the decision is less likely to be the wrong one. Again, it's going back to the risk thing. We should be doing the right things because, again, we've understood them enough to know what the right thing really is. And aligned with that as well is the fact that if we decide we need to change, we should find out that we need to make that change earlier. And therefore the cost of making the change and the cost of pivoting should also be lowered. Kind of saying the same thing in a different way, it's easier to innovate. If you're experimenting, if you're learning, and it's a constant, continuous discovery process, then you'll find that that's definitely easier to innovate. And generally, everybody will be much more aligned around the direction that everybody's moving in and what those business goals are. And you're going to be building the things that are aligned with your business goals. So I started out by talking about the goal of a roadmap was to minimise business risk. I want to refine that a little because I've learned a bit along the way while I was doing these slides. And I would say the goal of a lean roadmap is to minimise business risk. And that feels like the kind of phrase that can not only be understood by people who are using roadmaps, but also by people who are consuming them, who are sometimes a little bit averse to moving away from their comfort blanket timeline. I think if they understand that a lean roadmap is going to help them reduce the risk to the business, you're more likely to get them on side and to bring them into these better product management practices. And I'll finish up there and see if anybody's got any questions. Thank you.